The price of blood. Rome was a city of luxury and decadence, of opulent wealth and abject poverty. Messalina's family, despite their noble lineage, was in a precarious situation. The house was burdened with debts accumulated over the years due to failed business dealings and a life of excess. Her father, Marcus Valerius Messala, had attempted to maintain the facade of family prosperity, but creditors became increasingly insistent, and rumors of the family's financial ruin began to spread through Roman high society. Messalina was barely 18 at the time, a beautiful young woman with a haughty bearing and charm that characterized noble ladies. She was completely unaware of the severity of her family's financial situation, having grown up surrounded by luxury, servants, and banquets. However, things had begun to change at home. The family jewels began to disappear, secretly sold to settle debts, and servants were dismissed one by one. Soon, the only ones left in the household were her immediate family and a few loyal retainers. One night, as the moon dimly illuminated the halls of the old family palace, Messalina heard voices in the main hall. She quietly descended the stairs and hid behind a column to spy. There, she saw her father talking to a man she did not know, a wealthy merchant, a usurer famous for his ruthless practices. The man wore a simple toga, but his presence commanded respect and fear. "You know there's no way you can repay the debt, Marco," the loan shark said in a cold, calculating voice. "I've been patient, but patience has a limit. If you can't repay what you owe me, I'll take what's rightfully mine." Messalina's father sighed, his face drawn and his hands shaking. He looked out the window, as if expecting an answer to come from somewhere. "I have nothing more to offer you," he finally replied, in an almost desperate tone. "The house is mortgaged and the lands have been sold. All that remains for me is—" The usurer raised an eyebrow, and his lips formed a slight smile. "Your daughter," he said, interrupting. "I have heard of her. She is a very beautiful young woman, and on the slave market she would be worth very much. She may not cover the entire debt, but she will be a good down payment." Messalina's heart skipped a beat. She wanted to scream, to burst out of her hiding place and confront the two men, but her legs wouldn't respond. She stood still, listening to her father's response. "I can't do that," Marco whispered, his voice cracking. "She's of noble blood, my daughter." The usurer laughed scornfully. "Nobility is of no use when one is hungry, Marcus. If you do not accept, I assure you that you will lose much more than just your house and your lands. The Senate has ears for rumors, and if you do not comply, disgrace will fall upon your family." With the weight of despair, Messalina's father finally agreed. The deal was struck in silence, sealed with the resignation of a man who had lost everything. Messalina, still hidden, felt the world crumble around her. She sank to the ground, tears in her eyes. Her own father had sold her, as if she were nothing more than an object to settle his debts. The next morning, she was taken away in a cart, escorted by several men who did not speak to her. She was taken to a luxurious villa on the outskirts of the city, owned by the usurer. There, Messalina was presented to her new owner and informed that she was now his collateral. Although she was not officially registered as a slave, her freedom was an illusion. She was trapped in a web of debts and obligations that had made her a prisoner. For the next few months, Messalina was treated as a kind of luxury item, a showpiece at the usurer's banquets, where the wealthy men of Rome gathered to drink and discuss business. Her hosts forced her to dress in fine clothes and be accommodating to their guests. She often felt like a decorative object, a symbol of her family's defeat and her own uncertain fate. One day, the usurer held a banquet where the pressure on Messalina reached its highest point. One of the men present, an ambitious and corrupt senator, showed interest in buying her and making her his concubine. As she listened to the conversations where she was talked about as if she were a commodity, Messalina felt anger and despair burning inside her chest. She knew that if she did not do something soon, her life would be sealed forever. That evening, when the banquet was in full swing and the wine had clouded the guests' senses, Messalina took advantage of a moment of carelessness by the guards and escaped from the villa. She ran through the gardens and across the fields surrounding the property, her heart pounding in her chest. She did not stop until she reached the city, where she found refuge in the home of a former servant of her family. With the help of some loyalists, she managed to return home. By then, circumstances had changed. Caligula, the emperor, intervened when he learned of the situation of Messalina's family, since she was part of the imperial dynasty. The usurer was banished and his fortune confiscated. Messalina had regained her freedom, but the experience had transformed her. From that moment on, her gaze would always have a hardness that hadn't been there before. She had known betrayal and despair in its rawest form, and it made her stronger and more ambitious. She learned to trust no one but herself and to use her beauty and cunning as weapons in the political game of Rome. Gone was the vulnerable teenager. In her place was born the woman who would become the feared and powerful wife of the Emperor Claudius, known for her manipulative ability and her ruthless determination. Messalina never forgot the lesson of those dark days. She knew that in Rome, nobility did not guarantee safety, and that the fall could be as swift as the rise. But she also knew that those who had underestimated her would pay the price one day.